Every Christian theologian has lived in a historical context, and John Calvin is no different. So when we read his theology, we need to keep in mind that he lived during a certain time. And in his time, the Catholic Church, which had a huge influence, was teaching a very strong works righteousness, that you had to do certain things to be saved, that you had to obey and follow in these 7 sacraments so that you would be saved. And the Catholic Church was very corrupted at that point, so that they were saying that you had to buy indulgences to receive forgiveness, to buy little slips of paper of money going to the Catholic Church to receive forgiveness. And this is the same time that Martin Luther was beginning the Reformation. And Luther, who was a Catholic monk, would often confess his sins so much to the priest that the priest would get annoyed of him. They'd be sick of him. But in Luther's mind, if he didn't confess every sin, he could potentially go to hell. So he would confess for hours, start to leave the monastery, and then have a sinful thought and go back in and start to confess again. So in this passage for today, Calvin is teaching us the proper approach to God's sovereign grace. But anxiety about our future state steals in. For as Paul teaches that they are called who were previously chosen, so Christ shows that many are called, but few are chosen. Indeed, Paul himself also dissuades us from over-assurance. Let him, he says, who stands well take heed lest he fall. Again, you are grafted into the people of God. Be not proud, but fear. For God can cut you off again, that he may engraft others. Finally, we are taught by this very experience that call and faith are of little account unless perseverance be added. And this does not happen to all. But Christ has freed us from this anxiety. For these promises surely apply to the future. All that the Father gives me will come to me, and him who will come to me I will not cast out. And he gets that from John 6. So Calvin is saying that many hear the gospel is proclaimed to many, but few are given the spirit of regeneration. And Calvin is not teaching us to be the frozen chosen, to think we are saved and not need to do anything about it. He says our works, our actions will be the fruit of the faith inside of us, which is given to us by the grace of God. So if you have no fruit, that is evidence that you are not saved, but it is not what saves you. That's what he's talking about, perseverance. We need to persevere in our walk with God. And I think in our historical context, everybody in America thinks that they are saved. Everyone thinks that they're going to heaven, regardless if they know Jesus, regardless if they worship God consistently, regardless if they're denying themselves and following Christ. And so I think that's an important message for us, that we need to persevere in our faith. But we don't need to feel overly anxious about this, because as John 6 says, Jesus has got us. Everyone who God gives him, Jesus will hold tightly to himself. Neil Plantinga, who was the president of Calvin Seminary, describes this sovereign grace as an unspeakable comfort, that we don't need to live in terror, because we can fully trust God's grace, that we can approach his throne with confidence. And that should be a great comfort for us as we follow Jesus in our American context today.